In normal times, city budgets get approved in Boston with some adjustments, but overall, little drama. This year, during a global pandemic and national protests, some councilors pushed for significant changes, even if it meant putting off approval for a number of weeks. Our guest was among the majority of the councilors who voted to approve the budget on schedule with some additional adjustments by the mayor. We'd like to welcome the district councilor representing South Boston, the South End, and Chinatown, Ed Flynn. Thank you very much for getting with us, Councilor.
It's good to be with you, Chris.
Councilor, you were one of the yes votes. So what got you to yes exactly?
I thought it was a good budget during this very difficult time. There was funding that was allocated for public health, for public education, for infrastructure projects to deal with and work on improving racial justice related issues. We're going into a recession, or we are in a recession now. We also have a dedicated city workforce, and so there would have been cuts to basic city services. There would have been layoffs. So I think all in all, it was a good budget. And there will be some changes as well to the police department that we will work closely with the mayor and with the police department and the community on. But what's important to know is that city government is continuing with good programs available, especially programs that help our immigrant community. There's more money for the Human Rights Commission, for the Food Access Program, services for elderly, and public health. So that's why I voted for it, and I think it was a good vote.
By the way, in all of this atmosphere of protests focused on policing, did you ever end up seeing anything about policing that needs to be done differently, even if it, let's say, affects the way the police deal with the homeless population?
Right. I share the Mass Ave, Albany Street, Southampton area with Frank Baker and with Council President Kim Janey. We need a police presence in that area. Captain Sweeney has a good program, has a good plan on public safety, but also it's about public health. It's about drug treatment programs. It's about everybody working together as a city, as a state. The state resources there as well. But there's a public safety component to it, and there's a quality of life component, and there's services, public health services. So it only works well if people are working together. And this budget ensures that the program and services, especially in that hard hit area where we have a lot of challenges, this budget makes sense. We need, the police play a critical role in society, and we need a strong police presence that works closely with the residents. Especially, I'm proud of the community service offices in the city. They play a tremendous role working with the residents, working with community groups, working with city government. They're listening to residents every day, whether it's the Steve Foxes of the world, or the City Point Neighborhood Association, or the Chinatown Resident Association. It's about community service offices working closely with the community.
Chris, another thing that you've been concerned about is the economic fallout from the pandemic in Boston. And one industry that's been hit very hard is that whole hospitality sector. We have hotel workers who were let go, and we've had quite a lot of attention in this town to what happened at the Four Seasons Hotel. That seems to have changed because of the reaction, but what would you like to see happen next?
Well, the Four Seasons Hotel is a non-union hotel, and they had massive layoffs there. Most of their employees were African-American, Latinx workers, and Asians as well. A lousy severance package was offered But what they did as a non-union hotel, they worked with the Chinese Progressive Association. They reached out to Local 26 to get their advice as well. They talked to immigrant rights advocates, but they demanded respect and dignity. And they got that through their severance package that was finally offered. But it took public pressure on the hotel to do the right thing, to treat these workers with respect. So I want to say thank you to Local 26, the Chinese Progressive Association. But Chris, there's state legislation also on right to recall, where if hotel workers are laid off during this difficult economic time, that they would be recalled back to their place of employment within 2 years. So it's some protection for the workers. The city council went on record in support of that state legislation. So we're continuing to make sure that workers in this city are treated fairly, treated with respect. And we're fortunate to have people in the city like Local 26 that play a critical role in representing workers that are fighting for dignity. They're fighting for a fair wage, safe working conditions, healthcare. So this city works well because of so many groups that are concerned about working class people, concerned about immigrants, services for our most in need. So we're going to continue working hard on that issue, Chris.
Well, I know hotels are struggling if they don't have enough guests, and workers are struggling if they don't have the jobs, but there's a whole history of hotel labor relations in Boston. And when you've got these long-term employees at Four Seasons, I guess people must have been thinking of past years when sometimes people with a lot of experience were let go so that maybe they could be replaced by someone making less money.
Yeah, that's the case, exactly right. It's a way of downsizing and making cuts and not treating your workers fairly. I'm always concerned when there are downsizes and cuts, then when you bring back another employee, you're bringing that employee back with a lower wage. So that's hurting our working class families, that's hurting our immigrant workers. It's unfair. But Chris, that's why we have unions in this city, in this country. Unions fight for dignity for workers, safe working conditions, equal pay, health care, making sure everybody is treated fairly and with dignity, with respect. We're all workers, immigrant workers, fighting for rights of women. So it takes all of us to continue to work together during this difficult economy, but making sure that the workers of our city, that their voices are heard also.
I know you mentioned your concerns about immigrants. If you look at how things have worked out with COVID-19 infections in Boston, some neighborhoods with immigrants have been especially hard hit. You represent at least immigrants, in Chinatown, via Victoria, in the South End. Is there anything you can say about how effective the response to COVID-19 has been for those populations?
Yes, the COVID-19 has impacted our immigrant community severely. I've been working on this issue, COVID-19. I called for the first public meeting, actually. I believe it was in January. We had it at the Josiah Quincy School. And, the Asian community, the Latinx community, the African-American community, which I have a large percent in my district, were hit hard, especially in the South End. But what we saw during this COVID-19 pandemic is the health care and health-related issues impacting communities of color, and that more needs to be done to make sure that services, programs, city government, state government, federal government, but also the hospitals and colleges and universities and businesses are doing everything they can on public health issues that impact communities of color. We need to work harder on that. We need to work smarter on that. And we need an all hands on deck approach to make sure that everybody is entitled to the same health and healthcare and access to healthcare, regardless of your income. So that's a big challenge we have in the city, and we're focused on it. And that's something I've been working on since I started on the city council. The Chinatown community has the highest asthma rate of any neighborhood in Massachusetts. A lot of it has to do with the impact of the environment and where it's physically located. But public health just challenges in communities of color it is a top priority and must always be a top priority for city government.
You've also been concerned, as have other councilors, with fireworks. I know they were upstaged yesterday by the atmosphere, but you had, I think, a kind of at least a virtual meeting last week. What did you learn from that about what we need to do next?
We also have a meeting scheduled for tonight. But what the fireworks issue is a national issue. There's no one solution to it. It's not necessarily a public safety. It is a public safety concern, but everybody has to be involved in this. In a lot of it, Chris, I think we're going to have to educate people, not only on the dangers of fireworks, but the impact it is having on so many people, many in the communities of color, many people with persons with disabilities, young families, children trying to go to sleep or seniors trying to go to sleep, many veterans with PTSD. It has a significant impact as well. But it's letting people know that, you know, shooting off fireworks is not only dangerous, but also it's a quality of life issue. You're not helping neighbors. You're not being a good neighbor. And we have to think outside the box and communicate differently and educate as many people as we can, whether it's through churches, whether it's through nonprofit organizations, through youth groups, talking to residents on street corners. And that's some of the ideas I have proposed. I have sent letters to various civic groups across my district. I have talked to young people. I'm having a meeting tonight, as I mentioned, with the fire department and with the police department. Hopefully I can put that on social media as well so people can watch it. But it's about education of people of the dangers of fireworks and also public safety. And maybe it's also about doing a regional approach of state, New England states, you know, tracking where the fireworks are coming from and following up on it when people are buying fireworks in certain stores and leaving the state, or the sending fireworks through the mail system, which is also dangerous, is another way people have been sending fireworks. So I think there's a lot we can do on this critical issue.